Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is what makes AZX tick, why we're, what's our main philosophy and why customers come to us and what we're going to do to try and keep that going.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing, and you may have heard this before, is that we're can-do. And I know it's easy to say that we're can-do, but it's really something that you need to buy into. So being can-do is the simple way of thinking about it is not saying no. Obviously, there are certain things that we can't do, and we never want to say we can do something that we can't. But the reason we've been so successful is because many of the other companies in the industry are rigid with their timelines, where we are flexible with our timelines. Just having the San Diego office is an example of how we're trying hard to say yes. I mean, it's a pretty big commitment to have a West Coast office, purely to service the West Coast customers better, or to service people who are on that time zone better. The same goes for our drives. As you might know, every day the truck leaves here and drives to Buffalo so that we can drop our parcels in the UPS and the FedEx sort systems. And this comes at a terrific expense to us, where we could just ship them here, and then they would go to north of Toronto tonight, and then tomorrow they would go to Buffalo. So it would take a whole day longer, and it would cost the customer more money. And we'd have fewer options, because if you were to do that, you would only have ground and then 1 day and 2 day, where when we take it to the U.S. system, we have all of the U.S. options available to us, including 3-day shipping. So it's much faster, and we have more options, which makes it cheaper and better service. So that's a huge commitment to the customer, and it's part of the can-do philosophy that we've got. But other examples are much more simple. I think if you were to call many people in the industry or many of our competitors, and you ask them if they can do yellow ink on blue ribbon for tomorrow, they might say, no, we can't do that. Well, we're like, well, we can't do that, but could we do blue ink on yellow ribbon, like the reverse? Because for many people, the two would be equally desirable if your colors were blue and yellow. Or we might not have this hook, but we can have that hook. We may not be able to get all 10,000 out, but we can get 2,000 out. And what you'll find is more often than not that this sort of providing a solution is very much appreciated by the customers and results in getting the order. Even if, in the end, none of the ideas that you came up with were actually acceptable to the end user, Coke or whatever, the customer still appreciates the fact that you tried so hard to say yes. They can see that. They can see that you're trying to help them. And so this has been really the cornerstone of our success, is this problem-solving approach to the customer's inquiries. So before you say no to anything, make sure you're speaking with your colleagues and certainly the regional managers, because they may have a way to find a win-win solution for the customer. So some examples also of how you can make something happen that shouldn't be able to happen is just by changing some of the parameters. So if you skip the proof, you save time. If you do it on one side instead of two sides, you save time. Usually the main constraint is time or money. And both those things save both of those. There's also the direct drive. So whereas it takes a day, at the very least a day, for a courier to drive something, if one of our team hops in a car and drives it, it goes same day. Of course, that's only for when it's close enough to drive to in a car. But I'll give you some very interesting examples. I'm coming to my next point, which is the old days of why we became as well known as we are. We did some very interesting, very creative ways of getting things to the event on time. As you know, in this business, everything's about events. Unlike shipping underwear to Macy's, where it doesn't really matter if it arrives Monday or Tuesday. If you ship lanyards to the Super Bowl and they arrive the day after the Super Bowl, they're of no use to anybody. So that's our business, and it's a good thing too, because if were it not for these firm deadlines, people would never order stuff. So every time you feel stressed about making or not making a deadline, remember that that's the only reason that they didn't order these somewhere else where they're not deadline driven. But here's some good examples of the old days. So we used to drive stuff, do direct drives to New York repeatedly for the U.S. Open tennis, for concerts. Michael Jordan's last game, I think he was with the Washington Wizards, and they needed something there on a Sunday. And they gave us the order on Thursday or Friday, and we were making it Saturday, right up to Saturday night. And a couple of guys from the back, for a couple $100, hopped in the van and drove it 18 hours down to Washington. So these are the types of things that our company has done and still will do, if we need to make sure that we take care of the customer. My favorite example is Mac, our national sales manager up here in Canada, had an order that went south for Wynn when they opened the Wynn Casino for the first one. And they ordered some luggage straps or something like that were lost in transit. So we very quickly, because we make things here, we're able to make more. We made some very quickly, and he hopped on a plane that night and flew them down, because we made them so late that we missed the FedEx cutoff time. And this was known before we started making them. There was no way to make them and make the cutoff time. We only started making them at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, so he couldn't, get it to FedEx by 6 or by 7. But he ended up taking some late flight, like 10 p.m. flight, checked the order, say it was 1,000 luggage straps in 2 suitcases, flew down, and arrived and delivered the stuff himself. So, you've got a customer for life like that. Those are the kind of things that we do, and people appreciate them. I'll tell you another thing. When you have stories like that, and your customer tells you, I need to have that stuff there, and you go, well, we can get somebody to fly them down for you. It'll be $1,500. This is when it's not your mistake. When it's your mistake, you have to pay for it. But if it's not, you would be surprised at how much they appreciate the fact that you would actually do that. They never do it because it's so costly. And when they tell their customer that you're going to do that, their customer's like, it's fine, we'll take it the next day. But we will do it. We have people in the back who'll be more than happy to go explore Oklahoma City for the first time or wherever. And it speaks to the approach we have about solving problems. We enjoy overcoming the challenges, and our customers appreciate that. So the last point I want to talk about is improving and improvements. So we really rely on our staff for improvements. In fact, if it'll be in your review, if you don't come up with an improvement, it'll be actually a kind of a problem. It's hard to imagine you could be here for a year and not see something that was wrong and improve it. But I'll just give you a couple examples of what I mean, and huge improvements that staff have provided us. So the most obvious and the easiest one was the filing system. So in the old days, we didn't have that many orders, and we filed them the way that we thought would be most easily, that people would be able to find it. We called it, we did it for Ford, it was called Ford. If we did one for Xerox, it was called Xerox. So that works well for a while until you have a lot of Fs, right? And how do you archive? Like, how do you decide which one is the old one to archive if they're all just names? So it was a bit of a problem, but we worked around it and limped around. And I would say we did that for 5 years before somebody said, why don't you just file them numerically? Like, the system generates a sequential number for them, and then you'll just file them according to the number, and when it's time to archive, you just grab 100 or 200 that are in a row, that are all the same age, and archive them. And we've been doing that ever since, just like every other company in the world does. But everybody lived with it. Nobody came up with a solution until this one person drew from their experience that they had elsewhere. And so it really speaks to how, if you're not critically looking at the processes you have, you'll just keep doing the same thing over and over again. If your letterhead has a typo in it, and you just keep sending it out, all your customers think that you have bad attention to detail, and it only takes one person to look at it critically. So that's my point, is to ask you to look critically at everything you're doing. and say, is this the best way that it should be? Or if you see a mistake, go, I think this needs to be fixed. So the same also, the other big change that we have was moving to paperless. So this is something that we borrowed from another vendor. There was one time where we had to resell something. Let's say it was the Mylar badge pouches before we started doing them in-house. So we had to order them from another vendor. The thing went south. We had to call that vendor. They had a escalations department, and I was the one resolving this. So I called the vendor relations, or sorry, the escalation at this vendor, and I said who I was and what the order number was, and instantly she was like, yes, I'm looking at it right now. And I was flummoxed as to how she would be able to see my order so fast. Don't forget, these were the days where I'd have to go and look for it, right? Look for a physical file somewhere. It might be in the back of production, it might be on somebody's desk. We only had one version of it. And she says, no, everything's digital. I go, yeah, but we faxed the order in. She goes, yeah, we just have that converted to a PDF and saved in the order files. And from that, we borrowed that concept, which is a very obvious concept. We had to find a third-party service that converted faxes to PDFs, and then the rest of it was a piece of cake, right? And then we when the order was done, we took a picture of it, so we didn't need to find the physical sample. We still archive them, so if we do need it, we can find them. But most of the time, we don't. There's a picture of it there. So these were very simple ideas, but huge ideas that we borrowed from outside. So we're really relying on you to draw from your outside experience, draw from your own imagination, and help us to improve what we've got. So it's actually a requirement. And the last point that I've got is just that we have an open door policy, and so I would like it that if all the staff were to come in once a day into my office. I realize you're working in San Diego, so you can't do that, but you would still do something like that. For example, a Skype call, right? A FaceTime call, and of course, because there are two offices, maybe a phone call. But we have an open door policy. We have it because we want to be connected to what's going on. We don't want to be in there working on our things. If you have a problem, I'd like to know what it is. Grant would like to know what it is. Why? Because if you have a problem about this, like our J-hooks are too small, too big, our pouches are too thin, too thick, other people have that problem too. And unless we know about it, I can't help fix it on a large scale. So while you may be able still to get a solution for your customer, like tell them no, or you'll ask one of the senior account executives or regional managers, and they'll provide you a solution for that account, for that order, it won't help us address the larger problem, which is, should we have that SKU? Shouldn't we have that SKU? Should we make it more clear in our catalog that we don't have that SKU if we don't have it? Stuff like that. So in your case, it would be kind of a virtual open door, being in a remote office. But the idea is that we want a deeper connection with all of the staff, and that they should let us know their great ideas. If you see a product that you think would be hot, like you're out and you're at Target and you see something, if you're at a show and all the talk is about this, if you're at a show, one of my favorite questions for distributors, our customers, is who's your favorite vendor and why? I mean, not who's your favorite lanyard vendor, right? That would make somebody uncomfortable to answer, but who's your favorite vendor and why? What is it about their customer service that's so great? So that's what we're looking for, is in ways to improve the company, and we're relying on our staff to do that. So thanks very much, and welcome aboard. Thank you.